Alright, hi everyone. I'm back with another trimming tutorial. I covered foot rings and I kind of covered how to trim your pot flat. I don't think we need to go into that too much more, but now I think I'd like to show you a different style of foot ring. I call it, and I think most people call it, a glaze catching foot. So it's no longer a foot that we're putting on the bottom of this pot. It's kind of a foot where it's a raised edge on the outside, and that way when you glaze this and the glaze runs, it'll hit that edge and it'll stop, preventing it from dripping on your shelves. Okay, oh, again, we got a center, so get your pot visually as close to center as possible. Grab your pin tool, hold it with 2 hands, touch down at 3 o'clock, make a nice light circle. This one's pretty obvious. I can see this side is thick, this side is thin, so I know I have to push it in the direction of the thinner side. Do another circle. Okay, a little thicker, a little thinner. Push it in that direction. As the degree of difference gets smaller, you want to do micro adjustments. Don't overdo it. If you push too much, you're just pushing it off center in the other direction. This looks pretty good, so then my last test is to kind of just run a finger on the edge. If I feel pretty good about it, then great. I'm going to take my clay, I'm going to roll them into nice sausages, and I'm going to pack them around the outside of my pot. Remembering to keep one hand on top of your pot to make sure you don't shift it after you spend all that time centering it. And again, don't push into the side of your pot directly, push down and into the wheel head. Okay. I still like to start with this big flat tool to just level out the bottom. Again, these are just kind of basic pottery tools that you can get at a pottery store or Amazon or maybe even Michael's. But if you want fancier, more expensive tools, you're welcome to do that too. These aren't, the nicest. They're not super sharp, so they don't cut through the clay as nicely as, say, a diamond core tool would. But, work within your budget. It still gets the job done. Now I'm trimming my outside. And again, my bottom, I know it's not very thick, so I don't need to spend a lot of time trimming it down. If you have a thicker bottom, spend more time trimming out that thickness. But this time we're going to put in a glaze catching foot, so I don't want to reduce the thickness too much in this upper area because I want room to be able to trim in my glaze catching foot. So I'm going to leave it at that. If you have really thick walls, in this lower area, spend some time, trim that out. But if it's not super thick, then, leave some space. We're going to go back to this tool here. I can do a lot of trimming with just these 2 tools, so it's budget friendly. I like to use as few tools as possible. Don't overcomplicate things. There are like foot trimming tools where they're shaped like stuff and you can hold them. You can do whatever you like, but this is very beginner friendly, very basic. I like the square side again. This upper corner this time is what I'm going to touch along the side of my pot. I like to come down maybe 1/2 inch. Just touch in that corner first, kind of make a ridge. And then I'm going to flatten this out, use more of the flat head of this to reduce the clay below that ridge that I just made to really make it kind of stand out. The important thing with trimming is to just move slow with your tool and don't push too hard too fast. If you start gentle and nothing happens, that is fine. If you push really hard and you gouge into your pot and now you have a hole in your pot, that is much more unfortunate. So just be gentle and apply pressure as needed. Okay, you can kind of see this ridge coming into, fruition here. So I'm gonna start to use this tool to pronounce it from the other side. I like to slowly come around and round it out. I like a round glaze catching foot. You can make an angular, squarish one if you'd like, whatever shape, but just use your nice little small tool and you're just very, very slowly trimming in that shape When you're trimming on this ridge that you're creating, definitely don't push hard. Have a really nice light touch. You're not trying to trim it out. If I push hard enough, I could just trim this completely out. It'll be gone. So if you make a big mistake, you know, and it looks bad, it's not the end of the world. You can get rid of it. But, you know, the goal here is to not get rid of it. So I'm having a very nice light touch with my trimming tool, and I'm just kind of slowly putting in the shape. Every now and then I like to kind of stop and burnish like this just to see what I'm kind of creating as I go. And then, you know, going back, reducing the thickness below it, adding more dimension. And this feels good to me. So at this point you could call it done. If you wanted to, you could do kind of a foot ring in here and create a foot, you know, take your pin tool, put your circle back in, hollow it out. I don't know. Personally, it seems like overkill to me. I do one or the other. I don't do both, but it doesn't matter. It's whatever you want to do. But at that point, that's a nice glaze catching foot. What I do like to do, just to kind of jazz up the bottom of this so it's not totally flat and boring, is I use the round side of this trimming tool, and I like to kind of trim a little spiral into the bottom. So I hold it with two hands, I touch down in my center first, and then I'm fairly quickly pulling to the right to put that spiral in. And then again, I like to burnish just to make sure that there's nothing too sharp, nothing too raised, and that it feels soft. Obviously, the faster you pull this tool, the wider apart your spiral lines are going to be, and the slower you pull, the tighter it'll be. If you pull too slow, you're just trimming it flat. So a nice mid-speed. It also depends on how fast you're spinning your wheel. So keep that in mind. Do it a few times. If you don't like it, you know, go back to maybe your big wide tool, trim it flat again if you have room, and then you can always try again. Okay, so stop our wheel here. I'm gonna put my initials on the bottom. And then we'll remove this clay and we'll get a better look at the glaze catching foot. So you can see this nice raised edge. If I flip it this way, you know, you can see, oh, that's where I dug my nail in. I'm gonna sponge that out, ignore it. You can see how it's raised, so when I glaze this, if I want to get pretty heavy with my glazing, I can feel more confident that the glaze is going to run, hit this foot, and hopefully stop there and not continue down onto my shelf. I think it's a cute little touch. I don't really do it on mugs very often. I like to do it on vases. I think it just adds something nice. But again, it's up to you, whatever feels good. So there you go, that's a glaze catching foot. Give it a try.